Cześć, dzień dobry.
So hello.
Zostałem poproszony przez organizatorów, żeby
I've been asked by the
rozerwać Was przez
organizers
najbliższe 30
to
minut.
entertain you, and I'm going to take 30 minutes to do just that. It's going to be an unusual start. I have taken an interest in breathing techniques and yoga. Have you ever heard of coherent breathing? Have you heard of that? Coherent breathing. It's about inhaling the air for 6 seconds, and then you exhale for 6 seconds, and then you repeat. Once you have done that a sufficient number of times, you will have been relaxed. Why am I saying that? Why 6 seconds for inhaling and 6 for exhaling? Because I'm going to return to that later. You can translate it into minutes. How many of such inhales and exhales can you do? How many such cycles per minute? How many per minute? You're not great at maths, are you? Around five per minute, right? 5 cycles per minute. Remember about that, because I'm going to return to it later. A bit of good news. This presentation is going to be presented in English. I represent Crowdstrike, a company. I assume that some of you might have heard of it. We are a cybersecurity leader globally. In the US, we have 80% of the market. Here, in this part of Europe, Crowdstrike has been peeping in for quite some time. So you may not necessarily know of us and know what we do. So the bit of good news is I'm not going to cover that today. What I am going to cover is what Crowdstrike sees in the threat landscape. We are collecting the relevant information live, so I'm going to share some statistics with you. My name is Gabriel Kujawski, and if you want to test something, see how it works, if you have any technical questions, I am your man. I'm the person who's going to work with you, in all likelihood. Just a few words about Crowdstrike, because I'll give you numbers, I will tell you what we know about the threat landscape. Before that, I need to tell you where this information comes from. Crowdstrike is an EDR solutions leader, cloud native solutions. We are collecting 16 trillion events per month. We distill it, and we have 2 fractions there. We use AI to do that. We deploy our net researchers that assist AI, help it in taking the right decisions. Why 2 fractions? Why 2 factions rather? Because you've got detection and protective systems, but there's also another faction. This third faction builds CDI, Cyber Threat Intel. So we identify, collect events, and we use it to distill information on what various crime groups, what clusters do, and what certain regimes do. We have identified a number of such groups and their tactics, their modus operandi. This is 2024, and in this year we have identified so far 230 of those. You must have been reading about various cybersecurity related events. I believe you might have come across what we, Crowdstrike, do to track ATPs. And we are very much animal inclined. What do I mean by that? So, whenever we talk about various criminal groups that want to make money, when they want to steal your computing power to mine Bitcoin, or when they want to encrypt your data and blackmail you, we call them spiders. This is what we call them in our nomenclature. So you have typical cyber crime groups, but there is also another cluster, large organizations that work directly at the behest of various governments. And another animal will pop up here. Groups that have linked to China, that work for China to conduct intelligence operations, they are pandas. Those that have links to Iran are cats. There's North Korea too. And they are somewhat unusual. North Korea related groups are focused not so much on spying but rather on monetizing, because North Korea have a bit of an issue, namely they are isolated in the international arena. And that is why North Korea groups do what regular criminal groups do. They encrypt, they mine cyber or other cryptocurrencies, they steal cryptocurrencies from your portfolios too. You've got birds in Russia, Pakistan and India. You've got also various types of cats. You've got hacktivists. They're not after monetizing various resources, but rather they want to attract your attention. You've got South Korea, you've got Vietnam, Turkey, Syria, and Colombia. This is a part of our threat actors portfolio, the actors that have been tracking live. You might ask, where do we know all that? I mean, where do we have it from? Basically, there are hundreds of people that work to learn about that. Mind you, these people are spread over the world. They have been focusing on certain geographical regions. It is their role to identify the modus operandi of these groups. They track the tools that they use, they reverse engineer things, and so on and so forth. Threat intelligence. Why this and what is it useful for? You might remember that. The 13th of April 2023. So one of the Polish agencies announced that there is this phishing campaign. This phishing campaign targeted various diplomats and non-governmental organizations. Now we, Crowdstrike, we are a global company. We track crime groups and the groups that have links to various regimes. This is the email. So we had some information about that as early as 2021. But at the time, this campaign did not impact Europe directly, but rather different regions of the world. Long story short, the year is 2022. The campaign had been growing. It is run by Cozy Bear. It's a Russian group. We publish indicators in December 2022. Another part of the story, February the 17th, 2023. And similar activities start taking place in Europe too. So you've got those trillions of events per day. We can collect all these and we can see certain interesting things. We can learn how certain groups operate, and that is actually necessary to prevent attacks in this current landscape. Right. Somebody said that we have three types of lies. We've got lies, big lies and statistics, and I will try to share some statistical data with you. Ultimately, cybersecurity is about calculating risk, and to do that you need some input data. Now, 2018, this is how malware was used to carry out attacks. 61% of cases used some kind of a malicious binary file. Only 40% were attacks that used the so-called farming techniques. In the land, you've got a malicious actor, and they use the tools that are already in the system. For example, your team viewer, or your AnyDesk, or your PowerShell. So this is the situation in 2018. I'm not sure what your appetite, or rather risk appetite, is. Back then, it was 6 years ago. Basically, using your typical antiviral solutions was a bit risky. I have a high risk appetite. I climb. Mind you, my wife belays me, so my risk appetite is quite high. But even back then, I would say that it wasn't a good solution. Now, let's jump forward to the year 2023. Basically, this is what things were like a year ago. So, 75% of cases are attacks where you don't have your typical malware used. Now, in a moment I'll tell you what is behind these numbers. So, what I have just told you shows that you don't have a malware problem. Malware is just 1 out of every 4 cases. 3 out of 4 cases are about certain tools that you cannot detect using traditional methods that we are accustomed to. Do you remember MKS Vir? It's not going to help you. Anyway, you don't have a problem with malware, you have an adversary problem. You need to follow their tactics, you need to track them, trace them, you need to identify their modus operandi rather than focusing on malware. Yes, malware, it is good to know about that, but first you need to know who is attacking you and what kind of vulnerabilities they are focusing on. Another thing that we learned last year, you see more attacks where you have somebody in front of the keyboard. This is the situation in the US. So most attacks that we know of, 61% namely, in 61% of cases somebody was on the other side, somebody was using a keyboard. Mind you, script don't make mistakes. When a human does, you can see that. Secondly, how quickly threat actors can start moving laterally, so start moving within the organization. 2022, it was 84 minutes. This is how much time they needed. It's not much. Can you say, cross my heart and say, basically, I would have made it in time? Not sure. Last year it was only 62 minutes. It's not much of a difference. But you know, how much was it? 84 minutes in 2022, and it's only 62 minutes in 23. You're not great at maths, that's clear. Basically, they act 20% faster. since the moment they got in till the moment they are trying to move laterally to another system, to encrypt it, to steal your data. That's how much time they need. Mind you, this is an average time. The quickest was 2 minutes and 7 seconds. Now I'm coming back to the beginning. I was speaking about this coherent breathing. You did not want to work with me. So 6 seconds for inhalation, or rather to inhale, 6 to exhale, so a minute. So basically altogether it would take them 6 cohesive cycles, right, in this cohesive breathing. Now why that is so? The reason is that criminal groups, ATPs, they move away from malware. Why? Because it is easy to detect, relatively easy that is. What's the weakest link in our chains? Humans, obviously. So they try to exploit that. Maybe, instead of breaking in, you can simply log in. That's why they need less and less time to actually start their lateral movement. Now, credential access. Somebody could say, I've got this second authentication factor. It's great that you've got this two-factor authentication. Great. But the truth is, there are methods to go around that. The simplest one, the most brutal one, MFA fatigue, MFA bombing, you might have heard of that. So I've stolen your password, the name of the user. I'm trying to log into your Office 365. And what do you see on your mobile? Notifications from your authenticator. At a certain point, you might get tired and you might press accept. Basically, this simple method exploits human vulnerabilities. There are more technical methods too. What are they about?
Sometimes criminals use social engineering techniques. And such techniques can involve the following. You identify somebody on LinkedIn that has access to security systems, you call the help desk and you convince the help desk assistant to verify your second factor. And so you have this scattered spider criminal group that has been around since 2022. Is quite proficient at social engineering attacks. Imagine when Crowdstrike was performing its incident report, members of this group were trying to call into a Zoom session pretending to be employees of the company that was under attack. So you can see that they elevated the social engineering strategy to a very high level. So the front line is changing. So malware is not the key element. It's important and we need to be aware of it, but identity-related attacks are the most dangerous ones. Another interesting element, the public cloud. Over the years, we have seen that threat actors have been involved in certification as well. In past years, some attacks were executed blindly without being aware of the underlying AWS and GCP cloud infrastructure. And there's another one, Azure as well. All right. Last year, we witnessed that threat actor skills improved substantially and they are getting better at executing their attacks, they know how to snapshot the virtual machines operating in the public cloud. They steal the screenshot and then they use it to their ends. If it's a domain controlled image of the machine, then it's of course quite easy for them to proceed. What am I getting at? So if we are moving into the cloud-based environment, we need to prioritize security. But you secure a cloud-based environment in a different way. I am a network specialist by education, and I always say that in the public cloud, the normal principles of Newtonian physics do not apply. So you have to go about securing applications in a different way there. We have to emphasize the fact that if we move to the cloud, you have to remember that it's not only you that are moving, the cyber criminals are following you, so you need to protect yourselves. It is a broad topic, I will not go into details, but I just wanted to draw your attention to it. Another trend that we noticed last year, criminal groups tend to attack the supply chain, and I'd like to discuss a particular example, a group that is affiliated with the Chinese government. You might be aware that China has a very powerful firewall. If you want to connect your computer to a Chinese server, you need to pass through the Chinese firewall. So those groups affiliated with the Chinese government use the firewall to return or revert traffic. So, for example, you can revert traffic related to updating particular software, such as the Chrome browser. And so you can reroute that traffic, forcing the computer to download updates not from Google but from a different source entirely. So then you just use your own installation as the source of the update, and then the computer downloads malware during the process. So APT groups affiliated with governments are the ones that use this technique more than anybody else, because by attacking a single spot they can affect plenty of organizations. So they attack the supply chain directly by using this technique. Another important point, it's not only the servers and workstations that fall prey to APT groups or cyber criminals. Last year, there were plenty of problems related to network infrastructure, including VPN infrastructure. So last year we had Palo Alto Network and Ivanti as well that were affected. So there were critical vulnerabilities in VPN systems that allowed cyber criminals to infiltrate company infrastructure. So they allowed access without proper credentials. Why am I saying this? Some people think that network detection and response systems are becoming obsolete, that we should adopt a different attitude to protection, but that's not the case. We need to protect the endpoints and servers and workstations, but we should also protect network infrastructures. One of the security threats was detected because an NDR system detected that the malware started to operate differently than before. Otherwise, if that had not been done, it would have taken them much longer to detect the incident. Of course, in every presentation nowadays, you just need to hear the words artificial intelligence. So I am following that trend, and now I will discuss the use of AI by cyber criminals last year. mainly as part of information-related attacks. So AI applications such as ChatGPT are perfect tools for writing phishing emails. You don't really need to speak the language. You might remember 5 or 10 years ago the phishing messages were basically botched translations. But right now you just have to use ChatGPT, introduce the prompt, and you get a perfectly written email. One APT group affiliated with Russia produced a full feature video with a Netflix logo and used AI to dub the video using the image of Tom Cruise as well. So as you can see, AI can now be used for information attacks. And you can see examples such as these two groups that used AI to help them perform and execute attacks. That's a very interesting group. I've already mentioned it. They are proficient at social engineering and cloud-based techniques. They understand the public cloud very well. They attacked 2 casinos last year. They made a lot of money, and 3 days ago, one of the members of the group got arrested. 27 million in Bitcoin. That's the amount of money that was found in his account. The guy who was arrested was only 22 years old. So these are very young people that have a background in hacking video games and now are shifting over to address more serious topics. They started by swapping SIM cards, and that happens as well. So if you have a dual SIM card technology on your mobile, so that's not the best idea. You should do it differently. But this group also uses AI to generate script live as they execute the attack. Why do we know it's AI? Because we can see ChatGPT hallucinating. So this command that you can see here does not exist. I don't know if you've ever used ChatGPT. Yeah, finally you're raising your hands after half an hour of a presentation. My mother knows nothing about this, so she asked me what ChatGPT was. So I started explaining it to her, and we asked a simple question to ChatGPT. So I asked, or my mother asked ChatGPT as follows. I'm sorry, I have to find it because I don't remember exactly. What are there any blue-feathered birds? So it was a pretty straightforward question as such, and the answer was yes, peacocks, swallows, bee queens, and some parrot species can have blue feathers. So, bee queens, is that what you meant? I asked. No. I apologize, said ChatGPT. What I meant was a particular species of butterflies. So as you can see, AI can hallucinate, and you can see an example of that here. Here, LLM model was asked to generate a script. It failed partially, but it does prove that these groups that can execute the attacks actually use AI to make their attacks more efficient and to gain an additional advantage. If you've ever used the software included in this list, think it over again. Do you really want to keep using it? Because this software is also preferred by some cyber criminal groups. That's all from me. Thank you very much. Make sure you have all those 4 points covered, and if you are interested in additional details, you're welcome to download our report, which is available online. Global Threat Report, that is the title. I'll stand next to it so that you can take a photo of mine next to the slide. That's it. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, I'll be staying on with you. I'll be at the stand, so you can approach me and ask any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dziękuję bardzo.